Hi, this is Joe Overfield with Intelliplan Financial, and today I want to talk about estate planning because this is something that it can be very important, especially if you have a lot of assets and you want to make sure that your assets are going to your children and your family and charities so in a way that you want them to. And you also want to make sure they go in the most tax efficient manner. So what I'm going to provide today is we have 12 tips on how we can make sure that you're keeping your estate plan up to date and maximizing its benefits. So the first one is you want to make sure to create a will and power of attorney for healthcare and for property. Now, both of these are important. You want to make sure that all of your property is going to go to the right person in the right way. You also want to make sure that your health care is taken care of. What happens if you become incapacitated, you can't make decisions for yourself? You want to make sure that is going to be taken care of. Power of attorneys for health care and for property. Number two is you want to make sure beneficiaries, executors, trustees, guardians, that those are up to date. We spend a lot of time and money getting with an attorney, creating our plans in terms of our trust, but then we don't always make sure that everything is staying up to date. So make sure you're taking the time, and you should really do this maybe every year to 1 to 2 years, because things can change pretty quickly. And let's say if you have a life-changing event, you want to make sure that you update all of that information right away on that event. Number three is make sure the addendums to your wills are up to date. I've talked to a lot of people that they've created a will, but it was years ago and many things have changed. So if you've made any type of addendum or changed what you initially put in the will, take the time and make sure that your will is updated as well. Tip number four, what if you move to a new state? Okay. The thing about estate planning attorneys and working with your estate plans is that these are state specific. So the laws are very different. So when you move to a new state, you want to make sure that you get with an attorney in that state who is going to review your estate plan and make sure that it's up to date according to your new state laws and that it's compliant. So that is something I think people tend to forget because there's so much going on when they move states. Okay, number five, you want to make sure your living trust is up to date. Now, this is very important because maybe you're looking at putting together an irrevocable trust for tax purposes and for estate, or more so estate tax purposes. But in some states, you have the ability to decant that irrevocable trust and make changes. In some states you can do that, in some states you cannot. So you want to be aware that if you want to make some changes, what are the rules in that state? And then just work accordingly to maybe your revocable trust. Make changes there if necessary, if you don't have the ability to make changes on an irrevocable trust. But it's just something to keep in mind and keeping that trust in order for your estate plan. Okay, number six is making sure your children's trust is up to date. Now, this is something that some people are just not familiar with, and it comes to beneficiary designations. Every time when you put your children on as beneficiaries, then they typically will default it to each beneficiary gets an equal state upon your passing. So if you're thinking about you have adult children and you want to make sure that your adult children, your grandchildren, are also taken care of, then you want to make sure your beneficiaries are set up in what's called a per stirpes designation. So that means that, as an example, if you pass away, but let's say you have 2 children and one of your children passes and you forget to update your beneficiary designation, if you have it set up under the default per capita, then what happens is your surviving beneficiaries, your one child, will get everything. If you set it up under a per stirpes designation, then your one child will still get their half, but your child who has deceased would then, their portion would move on to their children. So you're taking care of your grandchildren as well. So you just want to make sure you understand the differences there in beneficiary designations, just to make sure that your wishes and your family is taken care of the way that you want them to be. Okay. Now, tip number 7, protect the assets of your grandchildren. We never expect that when our children get married, they will eventually end up in a divorce, but it is possible that can happen. So if you want to make sure and protect your grandchildren so that they are going to receive the assets that you want to leave to them, then you want to make sure it's set up properly that way. So that way maybe an ex-son-in-law or an ex-daughter-in-law is not receiving all the assets and your grandchildren are left with nothing. So number 8 is properly providing for heirs with special needs. So this is a different scenario, and there are specific trusts for children with special needs. Now, if you have a child with special needs, you pretty much can take care of them and make sure that their needs are met, but who's going to take care of them when you pass away? So you need to make sure you've designated that, and you also need to make sure that there's assets left to cover the costs of their care. So that is, again, where your estate plan comes into play using a trust. Okay. Number 9, always check your beneficiary designations on policies and all of your accounts. Okay. So again, it's important that you have everything updated within the different policies that you have. Life changes, people pass on, you forget to make those updates, and then your assets are not passed on the way that you want. So if you want to make sure your children, your grandchildren, family members, etc., are all taken care of the way that you want to have your own system of when you are checking and confirming that all beneficiaries are basically confirmed and properly set up. Okay, number 10, making sure assets are properly documented to pass by bloodline. And again, that goes with a little bit more towards the per capita, per stirpes beneficiary designation. Making sure that you understand what that means plays an integral part of how and when your children will receive the assets that you want to get. Number 11, check names on bank accounts. This is important because a lot of times people will put their child on their bank accounts so that if they were to pass away, the child can take on that account and manage the funds and it becomes theirs. It is a nice way to pass that on, but you also have to understand that now the child has control to go in and out of that account and use it to their wishes. If there's any concern about how that money will be used, or if you want to control how that's going to be used, then you want to be careful on how you set that up. Now, lastly, it's keep your documents organized. We just went through a list of things you want to be doing to properly plan your estate. But if everything's not organized, it's not easy to find, people don't understand it, then you wasted your time. So make sure everything is organized, people are aware of where it is and how to find it, and that your trustee that you've chosen is going to be the right person to see that your wishes are followed through. Again, I know I just threw a lot at you, but it is just so important. You've worked so hard your entire life to accumulate these assets. Take the time to make sure assets are going to be positioned and designated properly so that it goes to your family the way you wish it to. This is something that we can help you with. Now, I want to verify we are not estate planning attorneys, but we can give you a lot of advice, a lot of suggestions, and even recommend an estate planning attorney for you to help you put all of this together. So, hope we gave you some great information, and if you need some help, please reach out to us. You can find us at intelliplanfinancial.com.